phone, and this is a spot for positive, unconditional regard. If you haven't read the story about Mrs. Thompson, you need to go and do that before you come back and listen to the rest of this recording. Thanks.
So push pause and come back and I'll tell you a brief story. It's not a story, it's a true incident that occurred, and I'll start it now. I taught in the early 90s and I had a double homeroom, and I had a boy come from an outlying school, a small country school, and with all our students we received an enrolment folder. And the enrolment folder I picked up for this young bloke was really fat, and I thought, wow, here's a good one. He's done lots of things at primary school. I opened up the folder and then I started to read. He was diagnosed with ADHD. There were incident reports, there were recommendations from his teachers about how he should be managed, and it went on and on and on. I closed the folder and left it. The next morning I spoke to my colleague and I'd explained to her that I didn't want to read anymore, that every student deserves a fresh start. And he started year 7 with only that little bit of background knowledge that I'd read from his folder, but it wasn't pretty. Our school at the time was really keen on staff making contact with parents and trying to engage parents at year 7, because we know parental engagement is a real contributor to student success, academically, socially. So there's a real push for us at the school to contact parents in the first 2 weeks, particularly in year 7, because some mums and dads worry about their kids coming up to the big school and being lost. I waited before I rang this young bloke's mum, because I didn't know what to expect in the first 2 weeks. At the end of the first week, I spoke to the person that I team taught with and I said, have you had any incidents with this kid? No, nothing to report. I said, oh, it's only first week, we'll see how he goes next week. Week 2 comes by, he helps, he does what he's meant to do. At the end of the second week, no problems. I thought, oh, I better give mum a ring. So I rang mum. She's they're on a farm out of town. And I rang up and said, hello, it's Bruce Pridham from school here. I'm just ringing to have a chat. Let you know how, let's call him Steve. I'm ringing to let you know how Steve settled in. She was very quiet at the other end of the phone, almost expectant. And what she was expecting wasn't the phone call that I was making. She was expecting one of the phone calls that she'd had throughout her whole primary school, or his whole primary school life. And she said, is there a problem? And I said, no problem at all. That's why I'm ringing. He's fantastic. I started to read his report and just wondering, has there been some change or different circumstances at home? Because the kid that we're seeing in our classroom is not the picture that was reported in this file. She went very quiet and then started to cry. I had to actually wait for her to stop crying so that we could continue our conversation. And the first thing she said when she stopped crying was, Bruce, I've never had a phone call like this. The only phone calls I've ever had from school have been negative. So that kid had had 8 years at school and mum had never had a positive phone call from school. So I think it's really important that we ring home early and build on positive relationships, because when things turn bad, you've always got something positive to build on. Now, that young bloke, I lent him $2 at the end of the day to buy something at the after-school canteen before he caught his bus home. And the next day, I said, Steve, you got that $2 for me? No, he shook his head. I asked for it because it gave us something to talk about for the next 2 weeks. And there's no two worries about it. He had more than the $2. He was just scabbing $2 off me. And I was aware of it. He was aware of it. It was a bit of a game. He didn't pay me back. Year 8, I used to see him in the yard. I said, you got that $2 for me? No. And we'd have a bit of a joke and a banter about it. Actually, I used to punch him in the arm, and I told him I'd punch him in the arm continually until I got the $2 back. Anyway, never ever came back. I certainly delivered quite a few punches over the years, and it became a bit of a game. He ended up in year 12, and I went up to the senior school to work. And the first thing he said when I walked into the class was, "I've still got your $2." Now that kid went on, he finished year 12, he works, wonderful young bloke, and I see him now, and that boy that finished year 12 was not the picture that was painted for me of the student that was starting in year 7. Every day, every year, every semester, every week, students deserve a fresh start. They're kids, they're learning. We're the adults, we should be the ones that control the relationship. So don't judge a book by its cover, and certainly don't necessarily judge students by other people's experiences.
And there will be days where it is hard to like every single one of your students, because they can be very challenging and they are going to push you to the limit, because that's what they're tuned to do. But each and every student deserves your positive, unconditional regard so that they can reach their potential. And you can be the difference in one of these students' lives by just giving them the respect that they need and the acknowledgement that they need, that they can be a great learner.
If you can't afford to lose $2, don't lend it.